Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show over on Green Room as well as YouTube. And just wondering if anybody is out there. Hello, during this in the NFL inaugural week of the season. This is always the time of year that I hate most because the NFL is gets in the way of everything. It's kind of annoying. So, but you never know. There's people who don't watch football like me who won't spend, 12 hours in front of the TV wasting a beautiful Sunday, which I'm sure it is for across most of America, if not all of America, to have some fun with the family and get out there and enjoy some more sunshine before it starts to get a little bit cold out there. So, if you want to join me on the show, let's chop it up. I'm not even sure what we're going to talk about today, but besides Trae Young getting kicked out of a WWE match. But if you want to join, there's a link in the description below to get to my profile on the Green Room app, and then you can request to speak. And we'll chop it up, and I'll broadcast it to all the way to YouTube as well, simulcast across both platforms. Always exciting. We actually have somebody who wants to come in right away, Martin Jose, a friend of the Breakdown. So, Martin, what's up, man? Uh-oh, I don't hear you. Wait, why don't I hear you? Oh, no, don't tell me this is not working all of a sudden. It was working fine on before. You can hear him, yes. If you're on the son of a gun, this is not going to work over on the YouTube side because it was working. Let's see here. Let me try this again. I have to do this weird thing, but let me make sure all the volume and everything is up. All right. Say something, somebody. I don't. Oh, yeah, D-Rock. Shoot, son of a gun. All right. Well, you know what we'll do? We'll do the down and dirty version, I guess. I can't stand when it does this. It doesn't want to send the signal out from my mic. All right, let's do this then. I'll unplug it and we'll try and do it from the speaker. Let's see if that does anything. All right. Can you guys say something?
Brooklyn is in the house.
All right. Well, I'm going to move you guys over closer to my other mic, and we'll just do it. We'll do it down and dirty. Sometimes it works, other times it doesn't, but that must be somebody telling me something. Let me move this over here. Let me unplug my headphones. All right. Well, at least the guys on YouTube will be able to hear something. So, YouTube people, can you hear it at all? Martin, say something to the YouTube side of the family.
Yo, Coach.
Yep.
I
I can hear you now. Hopefully the YouTube people can hear you well enough. If you want to speak up a little bit, that'd be great so we can all hear the question or whatever you want to talk about.
Did you watch the Hall of Fame ceremony?
I watched the speech the Chris Bosh part, and that was pretty impressive. First of all, that Pat Riley just give away rings. I guess he's got so many title championship rings that he doesn't feel like he needs to keep them all. Maybe that's what happens when you have so many. But that was a really, really cool moment. I didn't see the Chris Webber speech. Did you watch that one?
No, but I see like parts of the speech, like Paul Pierce, Chris Bosh, and that's about it.
Yeah. What and anything else notable?
Nothing much. I was kind of busy that day, so
Yeah. I mean, so if you missed the Chris Bosh speech, basically what he said was when Pat Riley was recruiting him to come to Miami as a free agent, but to form the Heatles, he dumps out all of his title rings on the table and says, "Here, you take this one, and when you'll give it back to me when we win one together." And I gotta tell you, that's probably what sealed the deal. That's nobody else, no other GM, I don't think in the league. I'm trying to think at that time in 2010 could have done that. Who else would have had a bunch of rings? I don't think anybody. Phil Jackson went with the Knicks later, but that wasn't 2010 when he was with the Knicks, right? No, so he was still with the Lakers, right? So anyway, that was really impressive. A great way if you're trying to figure out ways to recruit guys. You should do that if you have any title rings spare, hanging around your mantelpiece. We already have a super chat. All right, thank you so much from on the YouTube side. Let's take care of that business. Hey, Coach, this is from Vuno Evdu, if that's how you say your name. I'm sorry if I messed it up, but hi, Coach. Saw your tweets in NBA 2K22. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's. I guess I'm still in that game. I remember when we did the deal, and they're going to put me in there, so it's really cool to see it up there. I gotta maybe fire up my my PS4 or whatever I have now and play the new game. It's always been fun to do, and I need something to do until the season starts, right? Let's see here. Hopefully, you guys can all. you guys can hear okay enough of the YouTube side. I can maybe move my mic a little bit if I need to. But let's just do a little browse through the I don't know the comments here and see what we want to talk about, because we're just in the dark days, the dog days of the end of the summer, end of the off season. Training camp starts in about 2 weeks, and I'm bummed because normally I get to go and visit some training camps or see some practices, and I'm going to have to go out of town on a family trip to for an event. And I'm pretty much going to miss training camp. I can't believe it. Maybe the end of the training camp doesn't last that long anymore. So if you miss like 3 days, it's almost the whole thing. So it really frustrates me. Let's see here. Abdul wants me to stop dodging his questions. Let's see here. Is LeBron the greatest flopper of all time, or does Chris Paul take that award? Well, we could turn that over to the comments too and see what you guys all think as far as CP3 versus LeBron flopper. There's got to be somebody else there, though, that we're missing. Who else would be in the flopping conversation?
Marcus Smart.
Marcus Smart wins, I think. That without question, he's got to win, right?
Joel Embiid sometimes flop.
Joel Embiid is in there. I mean, you can probably put Joel Embiid in the category of like flop and then also just falling on the ground all the time. And that goes, Anthony Davis is in that realm where he's not flopping, he's just falling. So there's a couple different versions of there for sure. Let me do this. I'm going to move my mic. Harden doesn't do it as much anymore, right? It kind of feels like he doesn't do it as much. I kind of feel like that's not the issue anymore. I'm going to quit out of some stuff. I feel like I'm a little bit stuttered. Let's quit out of some other apps here. I usually do much better at this. Let's quit out of that one, and hey, who needs a calculator right now, right? All right, I'm going to move my computer a little bit, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to move the mics right next to the speakers, just so everyone can hear it better. You can hear me probably fine, but let's move my mic without breaking this thing. All right, so my mic is going to be like right on top of my iPad now, so it should be able to hear. You should be able to hear as well as you can possibly hear. Okay. So who else is out there that wants to come on? D-Rock, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, but not on the flopping thing. Hopefully you can hear me while I got my headphones in. If you can, I'll just take them off.
No, we can hear you.
All right, great. So going back to what you were saying about training camp, I think that's probably a good place to start with a conversation. Which team do you think needs the training camp the most to get everything going well together, basically make sure they get the season started on the right foot? Because if things go wrong, maybe they think about blowing up their team or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. Obviously, obviously you're in Brooklyn, so you probably want to say the Nets, and that's definitely important because they need a full training camp to get those three together on the same page, along with Blake Griffin, and get used to not having guys like Jeff Green and that kind of stuff. So that's important from their standpoint because they are favored to win the title. In my mind, they need to have everything kind of go smoothly to start. Who else? I mean, everybody, needs help with the training camp. Let's see here. But I suppose if we're going to talk about, Philly could be in that realm because they I'm about to be finished with my Ben Simmons video. I'm not going to drop it today, though, because I just realized all the NFL teams, everyone must be watching that. So I'm going to wait till tomorrow morning. But I would think that Philly was going to need it because in theory they're going to do a trade. Maybe they do a trade before training camp starts, and they're really going to need to figure out how to integrate a star. I imagine at least one, and then another player in there in the mix. So they're going to be. It's crucial for them anyway because they got knocked out by the Hawks. They have expectations to win. They got to figure some things out. Doc, needs to figure some things out on his own too with his team. So that's one that's on my mind right now. Who else are we thinking? Anybody else it's vital? The Warriors. I don't know. Anybody else might need the training camp?
Well, the team I was thinking of that came off that popped in my mind was the Washington Wizards. They brought in a lot of new players, and of course you have Bradley Beal's pending free agency hovering them. So I think they need to get off on a great foot as well and figure out who are those keepers from the young players that they got from the Lakers and trying to blend them into the rest of the players that they're getting back. Thomas Bryant coming off of ACL tear, I think. They're young rookies, a sophomore now, Advija, I forget his name. But
Adia, yeah, Denny Adia.
Adia, Yeah, so they got a lot of pieces to figure out how to place together. And, of course, Spencer Dinwiddie coming off of his injury now and being the lead point guard, seeing how everybody meshes around the main hub, which would be Bradley Beal.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I watched Spencer play in a pickup game against all the other pro NBA players in L.A. Last week, and he looked good. He was moving around great, so I'm really excited to see him back on the court. I think he'll do nicely. It's a great call. Here's the weird thing about the Wizards. I don't know how excited they are. It could very well possibly be that they're going to make a big deal. Maybe Beal gets traded at some point, and they're going to kind of do a total reboot. So I was going to do a video, but I'm worried about them. I don't know if they have incentive right now to win, and they might not be, looking to mesh all these players. But you're right; they certainly have enough to have to mesh to figure it out.
I think Beal is extension eligible pretty soon, like early into the season.
October 1st. That's his date. October 1st.
Okay, so that's like right before training camp or something?
Well, no, training camp's going to start on the 28th, I believe. So right after training camp starts.
Okay.
Now, here's the thing about that, right? Now,
Yeah.
teams, if they want to trade for him, don't want to have a rental where he could leave right away after this contract is up. So you're right. They all might be waiting for like an extension to be signed, and then they'll try and trade for him, I guess. We all know what the extension is going to be, right? It's going to be the max.
His extension, it's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, and so that's the other problem. But I think listen. I'm not crazy, and it's not a hot take to say that Bradley Beal probably wants to leave Washington, right? I mean, he's looking around. He's seeing Kyrie and all these guys.
He's looking for a reason.
I don't think he's going to pull a Harden. He's not going to pull a Harden, I don't think.
No, right. Well, no, because pulling a Harden is what, coming in out of shape and
coming in out of shape, being teammates, all that. Basically, like
no. I saw him last week. He didn't look out of shape to me. He looked pretty good. So that's already like off the table. But no, he's going to be a good soldier, and he'll. I mean, anything that he'll want to do to get out will most likely not be public, and he'll make sure it's not public. And again, I'm talking out of my butt at this point. I mean, we were in the same gym, and I'm watching him, but I just get the sense that he probably is looking around. He's in his. What is he, 8th year, 9th year? It's like, it's probably, he's thinking, I want to get a championship. Everyone else has to team up with these stars. I don't have one right now, so I want that to happen. And so I would imagine that that's on his mind to some degree, where he wouldn't mind getting out of there and finding an all-star or two to pair up with.
But where do you think that he would land?
So that's a good question. Let's turn this into the Brad Beal prognostication. Well, let's see. Where can he go? Let's just pretend that he signs an extension, and it's going to be he's a league leader in scoring.
$50 million.
Yeah, it's going to be insane.
$50 million in his first year of the new contract.
You think it's going to be 50 a year?
I was listening to I think Zach Lowe's podcast from about a month and a half ago, I think, and he had a person who covers the Wizards. I think he said a new contract for him. The max would be, I think, close to or $50 million the first year of the extension.
Now that's rough, because that really blows up your salary cap to play alongside other people. I mean, by the way, it's almost like maybe a team tries to trade for him before the extension, so that when they negotiate it, they could be like, listen, we got you. You're playing alongside. Who's a star, all-star he wants to play alongside? Who would that player be? Probably a wing. Who?
Embiid.
Okay, so Philly gets him, and they're like, listen, we got you Embiid. I mean, let's just say Philly gets him. They have to give up Thibault, they give up Simmons, they give up a pick.
More than a pick, probably multiple picks. I'm
just trying to think, is that the team is that a good enough team, when you compare it to teams like the Lakers or the Nets?
And I wonder how far Philly's they pride themselves on defense. Their defense would fall off.
You know where he probably should go is Boston.
Boston trade like Jaylen Brown and.
Yeah, no, well, right. I mean, it's too bad, because I'm thinking he should play alongside Brown and Tatum. But you're right; they'd have to include one of those. Hopefully they'd include Smart. Just to say, I think if Smart got out of there and they could bring Beal in. But is there any way for the Celtics to do a deal where they don't have to give up the two to get Beal?
I just don't think the Wizards would.
What's that?
Yeah, I think you would have to give up Jaylen Brown to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow.
And more.
I'm pretty high on
I'll give you
Jaylen
the
Brown
team.
too. I like Jaylen.
I actually might like Jalen Brown a lot better than Tatum, believe it or not. But at some point you have to say like it's not working clearly in Boston. They've given it 3 years and now they've lost. They've new coach. The roster is now going to be revamped. Having lost. Well, they lost Fournier on that rental. They lost Kemba. Who's going to be the starting point guard for the Celtics?
Probably
Smart.
Marcus Smart.
Yeah, that's a problem. I'm sorry, but Marcus Smart's not the guy you want to rely on as a starter like that. I don't think his positives don't outweigh the negatives in that role. And then who's the other? Okay, so it's going to be Smart, Brown,
Schroeder.
they got Schroeder. Okay,
Schroeder might start.
I would start Schroeder and bring Smart. You know what? They might start Schroeder and Smart. Right, it would be Schroeder, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Cantor. Who's going to start at center?
So,
Horford, that Time Lord.
Oh, they brought Time Lord, or they brought Horford back, right? Does that? I didn't see Horford in OKC. I'm assuming he had a nice year off and rested. And
he was pretty good. I think he still got it.
Yep. Okay,
he's like 35, going on 36, I think. So
going on 46, but okay. Yeah, all right. Maybe he'll give him something. But yeah, okay. I mean, I don't like that team that much. Do you guys? I don't see that.
I don't like.
I mean, I like the Hawks a lot better than most everybody else in the East.
The Hawks are going to be really good. I think they're going to win a lot of regular season games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Bogdanovich is fully healthy, and then you also have DeAndre Hunter coming back healthy for another year.
Which is somewhat of a question, because I think Bogdanovich has had some injuries throughout it. I don't know. Maybe it was just this year.
I want to say it was freakish for him, but you know, and generally, like I say this all the time, I like to prefer to just envision the NBA where the injuries aren't a thing that happens. Every once in a while, there's a player who, like, with their biomechanics, to me, indicates, like, this is going to be a problem going forward. Or a guy like AD who falls all the time, and, like, that makes you worried. But with a guy like Bogdanovich, it just feels like, I'm just assuming he'll probably be healthy, barring some crazy, freak accident. And DeAndre Hunter, who's looking really good, too, like, you know, he gets healthy. They're just loaded. We saw Cam Johnson. Yeah.
Thomas?
What's his name?
Cam Reddish.
Gosh darn it. Who's Cameron Johnson? Cameron Johnson's a football player?
Johnson is the one of the Suns.
Oh, no. Suns. There's too many Camerons. There's Cameron Payne, there's Cameron Johnson, there's Cameron Reddish. Cam Reddish, I was really high on before the season started and didn't really pan out, but then you saw in the playoffs, he actually, came alive and they weren't really prepared to guard him, so they didn't really know how to do it, and he was lighting him up a bit. So I'm telling you, they're loaded, and they have all this experience playing in the conference finals now. So
they're going to be loaded for, I'd say, with these young wings of like Kevin Huerter, DeAndre Hunter for like a year or two this year and maybe next year before they can't extend all those guys. I imagine the Hawks are going to want to pay a ton of luxury tax.
Definitely not for a guy like Huerter who helps them a lot. Like that's the situation you got to figure out.
He won them Game 7 against Philadelphia.
He did. But a couple of those guys are going to say to themselves, like, can we get like 75% of that production for half the cost? And they'll probably say yes, and then they'll say, okay, well, let's move him. But we'll see. Huerter, I'm really curious. I want to see him prove it one more time and really show us that he merits that role. I'm just about sold on him. I like what he did in the playoffs, but I need to see a little bit more. So that's an interesting thing. So I guess, are we still floating around the question about the training camps and who needs the most? Who needs the most work?
I mean, I'd say probably the Lakers with all their.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Yeah. Okay, let's get in the Lakers. And don't forget, if you're on the YouTube side and you want to chop it up with me like this, hop over to the green room, link in the description, and request to speak, and I'll bring you in. We still have room in the chat for everybody. The Lakers. All right, so they added. Let's go over what they added so far. I did the video on this, and it was mostly focused on Russ. They lost Schroeder. They added Russ. They brought back Dwight. They still have the corpse of Marc Gasol. I believe he's still there. No. They didn't. They just got rid of Marc Gasol, right?
To reduce their tax bill.
Yeah. They just got rid of him. They're going to let him, I guess, retire. It sounds like he went back to Memphis, and they're going to let him go back to Spain. Okay, so what are there any? Oh yeah, okay. They brought in Kendrick Nunn, and they brought in
Malik Monk.
Malik Monk. You're right. I am intrigued and they had to do that because they were so damn old that they needed to bring in at least a couple players who were a little bit younger to at least make the average age go down.
They brought in Dwight Howard.
They brought in, and what's that?
They brought it down to 33.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It goes from 37 to 33. Now, all right. Who's the starting lineup for the Lakers right now? Is Monk going to start? Is it going to be Nunn? Is it going to be what? Who?
You can't start Horton Tucker and Westbrook.
Why not?
Not enough shooting. If you're going to have Horton Tucker, Westbrook, LeBron,
Yeah.
AD,
Anthony Davis,
and are they going to go?
Unless you're starting Carmelo at power forward, which
Oh right.
Might be
We forgot to say
maybe
Carmelo.
Wayne Ellington or Kent Bazemore.
Let me get Talon. I want to see Talon Horton Tucker's shooting splits real quick. Horton? Why am I not coming up? There he is. There. Oh, there's no Y in Talon. All right. Last year he shot 28% on 2 threes a game. I feel like at one point in the season he was shooting better from 3, and they're all like, "Hey, look at this." They're gonna miss Caruso. I feel like at this point with that.
I think so. Yeah. He's easy to plug and play because he can knock down an open shot.
Right. Well, and that's why it's funny. Caruso wasn't that guy until last year, right? He didn't really shoot that well from 3, even though that position tended to be the guy that was a knockdown shooter. But he figured it out last year pretty well. And you're right. Defensively, he just made plays all over the place on defense that were unheralded stuff a lot of the time, and people might not have noticed. So they're going to miss that. Although THT could probably do something similar on the defensive end, that and maybe a little bit more because he's got a little bit more length, these longer arms and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, I think offensively he might bring some more downhill dribbling attack to the basket than Caruso, but he's certainly not going to space the floor like that. Now Nunn can space the floor. I mean, let's see. Nunn didn't probably shoot that well last year. I feel like. Let's look.
I think he
did shoot pretty well last year.
He shot 38%. In fact, he shot better last year than he did in the bubble, which I thought he might have been one of those bubble guys who's going to shoot like from 3 nicely and then kind of crater. But he actually shot better last year. So he can.
I think he's a nice X factor for the Lakers.
Okay. Now Monk probably shoots 35% from 3, right? This is my memory.
He had a crazy season last year.
He went 40%. You're right. So he was pretty much a very, very below average 3-point shooter as a career until last year.
I think. Yeah. Is that a fluke? Like, it seems a little fluky to go from 28 to 40%.
Yeah, and he only played 42 games, so it's not like a complete and utter, a full record here. So that's interesting. I might want to take a quick peek and look at about 50 of his shots last year to see if there's anything to discover there, if it's an anomaly.
I'm the most interested to see who dominates the ball. Is it going to be LeBron or Westbrook? Because in the playoffs, it should be LeBron because he's the best decision maker. But
we did see. So here's the problem I had with LeBron last year alongside Schroeder. We would see LeBron take a dribble in the backcourt and then just throw it over to Schroeder and let him run the show, which was nice, like a nice throw him a bone. He did that a lot, but when he did that, he ended up just disconnecting himself from the offense and standing in the corner with his hands on his knees.
He hasn't been good off the ball since Miami.
Right, and so as a result, it makes it harder on everybody else. So and it's weird that he would want to do that. He's just okay, your turn, and it's always been that way with a lot of LeBron teams. It's my turn, it's your turn,
The best way they figured that out was with Wade in Miami. If Wade would run the show, you would have LeBron cutting or setting screens off the ball. But since he returned to Cleveland, he's been pretty horrendous off the ball. Doesn't really do much but sit around and watch.
I thought he was better. I thought he was good when Kyrie was there. After Kyrie left him in Cleveland, I think that's when he started.
He had some good cuts. On that. He would have a good cut off the ball. But his best.
Yeah. It's just weird that he doesn't recognize, with his IQ, he doesn't recognize how much gravity he attracts with cuts or just movement. I guess, it's
a much better shooter, though. I think that's what he's over-relying upon.
Yeah, okay. And also it just lets him rest. And I feel like at this point in his career, it must be worth it to him to say, I'm going to take a little bit off here. I need a rest here for a couple possessions. Let Schroeder do his thing, and then I'll come back and I'll be the man on this next possession. It sort of must be the calculus he's doing.
It's a little off topic, but I think the problem with the Rockets in 2018 was that James Harden and Chris Paul are both pretty bad off the ball. Like, they don't do much off the ball.
Yeah.
Chris Paul's a little better, but James Harden just stands at half court when he doesn't have the ball.
Right. Do we feel that way from last season, though, playing alongside the other two?
No, he was much better. He was a little better.
In my mind's eye right now, because there wasn't a ton of games, right? They had a handful of games where they all played together. He was dominating the ball, but he was awesome that way because he was controlling the action, setting everybody up, and not having to be the focal scoring point.
And, yeah, he would let Kyrie do his thing, and Kevin Durant is. He's really good off. He's good off the ball.
I'm going to do a video on that next. I think on the Nets and what the big three can look like based on the. The reason why I like this idea for a video is because how many games did they play together? Does anyone remember last year?
9.
9?
Yeah.
Great. So I'd only have to go through 9 games of clips, right? That's really. But this Ben Simmons thing, even though I'm focusing mostly on Game 7 of the Hawks series, but other stuff, I've probably gone through 750 clips of his. It's taken me a week to get through and finally to get done. So this is good. I'm going to go through the clips in the 9 games and then analyze what we see from there and what we can expect.
The thing I've noticed about Ben Simmons, he just doesn't have great touch, on his jump hooks, on his post-ups.
Yeah.
It feels like his jump hooks are always in and out, or he doesn't have a great soft touch.
Well, it's because he switches hands. He shoots with his left. And
Well, but by the way, there are guys that like to finish well with their other offhand, and that's fine too. Although, obviously, we've argued that he's probably a righty. There is a stiffness to that right hook that's sort of at a weird angle off of the shoulder that I find interesting. Yeah. But the guy shoots 63% at the rim, right?
I guess so, yeah.
That's in the elite territory. Now, I think Steph shoots better. I looked at it the other day and my mind is much, but it's something like that. Although if we're talking, maybe I'll call it up real quick. But so that's the problem. Is you can point to Simmons saying he's got a problem with the touch or whatever, but he makes a lot of shots at the rim.
He does.
My problem, what we're going to watch in the video, you'll see. I'll give you a quick sneak insight into what the editing is looking like. Is the things that he does best in the half court are receiving handoffs where he can turn and go downhill, or even getting ball screens. They don't happen in the playoffs all of a sudden. They completely dry up. Even the post-ups, which are okay with him, come so sporadically that it's how you're expecting the guy to do this in the fourth quarter at the end of the game. And when he passed off to Thibault, he really hadn't had very many post-ups up until that point. So it's why does that keep happening? Is it a Doc issue? Is he not, influencing the offense enough to get those actions? Or is it Simmons just so scared to touch the ball because they're going to foul him that he doesn't want it? It's a mixture of both. But when you keep seeing he didn't receive one handoff in the playoffs according to Synergy, not one. And he didn't even get that many in the regular season. When he did, it was how are you not looking at the footage and saying, yes, this is what we need to do more of, especially in a Game 7 when otherwise it's 4-on-5. And then you throw Thibault out there and it's 3-on-5. And literally, I have clips in that fourth quarter. Him and Thibault are doing the equivalent of playing right field in Little League. They literally are just burying them on the weak side saying, please don't go in anywhere near the ball.
Is it safe to say that the 76ers made a mistake signing Doc Rivers to coach?
Listen, Doc had the pedigree of having won a championship, but there were also a lot of
Doc Rivers as a coach.
Yeah, in his career, he's had a lot of issues, and part of the problem, which I think he's gotten better at, and even though it's less X's and O's, is that the way he complains at the refs, I think would influence the team in a negative way. We certainly saw that in LA with the Clippers. And
with the Clippers, because Blake Griffin and Chris Paul are were the 2 of the 5 biggest complainers.
Yeah, so they're already like that, right? So that's one that's they're already predisposed to be that way, and it felt like to me Doc would just heighten that and make it worse. And I felt like we saw in the playoffs a little bit of that too, where it's here's a team that needs. It just needs more better body language from the bench, and he was sitting there kind of wanting to get into his complain mode too much. So it's an interesting question, and I think Doc has a very short window here to really show that this is the next step.
He didn't have the best roster. Like they didn't really like. I don't think Ben Simmons is really. I think he's a power forward that can handle the ball. I don't think
he's really a center. So I show
really a center. Yeah,
his best.
Giannis is a center too.
His best, and by the way, he's a center on offense. Like defensively, whatever. Like so, his best game was against the Jazz. He scored 42. He had 13 assists, whatever it was. He didn't miss hardly. And when you watch him play in that,
his free throws.
And he hit free throws in that game. I can't remember. You know what? I have to look at the box score now. But
11 of 13. I just.
Oh really? Oh crap! Maybe I'll have to make a mention of that. Although that's such an anomaly, it might not even be worth mentioning because every other time he shot, he couldn't hit more than 50. But whatever it was, the point being that he was like sort of the fulcrum around four shooters. And that kind of spacing for when he would roll, when he would set screens, was really that's when he's at his best. Plus, when he's playing that way at that position with the four smaller guys around him like that in the open court, he's now attacking. And if it's his man, like a Gobert was having a hard time getting back in time to stop that. And then if not, it's a guard back, and he would just abuse them. He must have had 5 or 6 or 7 just transition scores. So, but you can't play that role in the offense when you have Embiid on the team. And it just so happens that Embiid is the best player in the NBA at that position. So, of course, he's not going to play there hardly at all, certainly when they play together. And so now you're going to put them on the same court. So it is uniquely a problem that there's only a few teams that have a player at that position that would be better than Simmons. So it's like, yeah, he could pretty much go anywhere else.
Coach, that game where Ben Simmons scored 42 against Utah, Dwight Howard played that game.
And it was awful. Yes, when they played Dwight in there, those lineups when Dwight was in were really bad. They were like net rating of -50 and -40, in really small sample sizes. But like he gummed up the works a lot more. Even though he actually played okay, his numbers were fine in the box score. But when I was watching them, like, the spacing got so bad all of a sudden once Dwight was in there alongside Simmons, and they probably might have had Thibault too.
Matisse Thybulle, Dwight Howard, and Ben Simmons lineups ever used?
Yeah, I can tell you that. Wait, I'm sorry, Thibault, Howard, and Simmons? Probably. Let's go over to NBA Wowie and plug that in.
What was the net rating of that lineup?
I'm going to do that right now. So if we go Sixers, and I'll include the whole thing. Oh, it's already set to Sixers. That's great. So Howard, if you haven't used NBA Wowie, you might like it. But there's also the play-by-play data. I'm forgetting the name of that. The PBP or something that has a lot of this stuff too. But the interface is pretty good. Simmons, Howard, and Thibault. Okay, so if we put those three guys in for all of last year, including the playoffs, and I have a super chat I want to get to in 1 second, so hang on, Brian. Okay, so here was the offensive rating of that with those three guys is 99.7, which is terrible. And then the opponent offensive rating is a 106.7. So the negative rating is a -10 net rating for those lineups. Not a ton of minutes. They didn't do it a ton. 150 minutes total, which is probably pretty low for a three-man lineup. But again, the fact that they played it at all, like in the playoffs, it was just a nightmare. I know they wanted Thibault's defense, but when they would have just even Simmons and Thibault together was a problem on the offensive end that you can't afford to have. Part of the problem is Simmons doesn't look to shoot at all. He will initiate the offense, won't even look, but he's got a huge sag of 10 feet.
That's the biggest issue with 76ers.
So why are they having him do that? Don't have him bring it up and like hand off and like that gets all gummed up because his man is sagged so much. Get him coming out of the corner off of handoffs where he's turning the corner and making a problem. Yeah, it just didn't make any sense, and that's where the coaching comes in. And also, I know there's organic offense, and you're letting those guys, spread and play their game and read the defense. But when you're playing the playoffs, you need to be able to influence when it's not working as well, and that's when Doc has got to be like, no, Ben, get on that right wing, and Joel dribble toward him and hand off and let him curl, and then you roll with him. I'm telling you, that's going to be at the very least, it's going to make him a viable offensive player versus 4-on-5. And when that doesn't happen, it makes me just scratch my head and say, "What are you doing? Why aren't you? Why you have days in between games, and this is what's killing you. Fix it." But let's get to a super chat real quick because Brian Holiday, very generous super chat. Thank you so much on the YouTube side. If you want to grab my attention, that's a great way to do it. He asks, "How would you build a championship team around Giannis? I know you generally like guys that are more skilled, though. Would you use him in different ways than he's used to now?" I mean, here's the thing. We have the answer, I guess, because Giannis won last year. So, how would you build around? I mean, obviously, Giannis with 4 shooters around him is really the key. Although, it's funny because he probably needs another guy. It's funny. I can say what he needs, even though they've already done it. So it's like, does he need anything besides what they have? In my mind, the team that with Giannis would be the best if they had another guy who can play and make off the dribble, who's a really good, like a James Harden kind of a guy. That seems to be the guy. Now, what they had to rely on ultimately was, Chris Middleton doing that. And Chris Middleton is good. He's not great at it, but he was good enough where they were able to win. Now, let's not pretend that they got a little bit of a break against the Nets.
In a normal year.
Right. In a normal year against the Nets, when Giannis doesn't slide underneath Kyrie's foot and he breaks it or hurts his ankle, like they're not winning that series. The Bucks will not win that one. Just like the Suns probably weren't beating the Lakers if AD goes down, stays healthy, even if Chris Paul doesn't get hurt or doesn't hurt his neck or whatever. I don't see the Suns beating the Lakers the way it was going the first 3 games, and so. So we could look at the Bucks through that lens, where like things happen where this is probably not necessarily sustainable for them to do it again in another year. But you need somebody else who's an elite ball handler, creator off the dribble. I think with him you have to, and then certainly you need as much shooting as you possibly can get. The 3-and-D guys, which is what they have. Like the Middleton guy is exactly what you need around him. I liked to some degree what Holiday was doing, but I feel like you could find that from other players too. It wasn't necessarily unique.
Holiday is just so inconsistent offensively.
Yeah, he is. Perhaps it won't be as much with a training camp and a whole year to kind of get the chemistry going. So because we've seen him be better on the Pelicans more consistently. So that might be it as well.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone thinks
an inconsistent role too.
Right, and that's hard when you're playing alongside guys like Giannis, who they have a huge sag, and then they want to try and ISO a lot, and everyone's standing around. It's a tough conundrum with Giannis, and I don't think anyone. I mean, listen, the Nets have to be favored over the Bucks. I wonder what the Hawks like. Do we feel like the Hawks could beat them in a playoff series? Who would guard Giannis on the Hawks?
DeAndre Hunter, probably Clint Capella.
No, it has to be John Collins.
Yeah, I think Collins. I mean, they'll do it by committee. By the way, I liked what I saw from Collins, defensively, and they brought him back, and I guess him and Trae Young have started to figure out, their issues between each other. By the way, what could very well be with Trae Young? When you shoot the ball from 40 feet without passing too many times, and, obviously you have to make a few of those, if you're not like the best teammate of all time, you're going to engender ill will, especially from the bigs. So guys like Steph and Dame are the best, the best teammates in the league. Because they're the nicest, most, caring guys like that, and that buys them, some leeway to shoot some of those shots.
And also, they're some of the greatest shooters of all time, and Trae Young shoots like 35% from 3 for his career. Yeah,
that's another great point. But Trae has shown enough to merit, especially from deep. I think, almost there. But there could be the sense that Trae wasn't a good enough teammate. He wasn't outgoing enough. He wasn't reaching out to be that guy so that he could temper down any kind of ill will he might get from some of those shots. Now, he also, I think, eliminated some of those shots. I think after that big blow-up that they had, my takeaway was that he decided to be a little bit more judicious with some of those shots. And, as a result, they got better and, the team played better and everyone was a little bit happier. So that's huge.
Well, that was the big difference between Lloyd Pierce and Nate McMillan.
Go on.
Nate McMillan got him to understand, listen, you got to get your teammates more involved, whereas it kind of seemed that Lloyd Pierce allowed Trae Young, because he's the young superstar that you got to keep happy, to do what he wants. So when those rumors were leaking about John,
he had him on a tight leash.
Basically, Lloyd Pierce allowed it and allowed that culture to deteriorate.
That's interesting. Well, okay, but here's the thing. I mean, Trae Young was averaging double-digit assists. It wasn't like he wasn't passing and setting guys up, even during the Lloyd Pierce time, right? Let me see what he was averaging.
The thing is, I think John Collins can't complain because he's not going to score off the dribble. He's not going to score off a post-up. All of his buckets are all alley-oops.
Nah, not quite.
I mean, realistically,
I would actually say he has a decent face-up game. Face-up from like 17 feet.
It's not like if Trae gives him the ball, he's going to start averaging like 23, 24. Like, his game is around, revolves around what Trae Young does. So it's him and Capella can't really stay off switches or anything.
Yeah, that's a great point. Collins, only eats. And by the way, Collins is in a contract year, right? So he really wanted to get good numbers. Let's look at his numbers real quick because I want to make sure. Because a guy who can shoot elite from 3-point land and get 20 and 10. So he was a 20 and 10 guy. He shot 40% from three. Like you're talking about $40 million a year going into the contract year. And all of a sudden, he averaged less minutes. He was, at 17.6 points overall. We should probably look at the difference between the Lloyd Pierce era and then what happened when McMillan came in. But he's only doing 18 and 7, and he was shooting. Actually, he saved 40% from three, so that was good. So I could see why the pressure was on him to try and maintain that. Because again, if you get over 20 and 10, and you're shooting 40%, and you're that size, yeah, you're worth as much money as anybody could possibly pay you.
But
yeah.
If he's going over 20, you're definitely going to be losing.
What's that?
Because if he's getting over 20 points per game, you're probably going to be a losing team. Because it's not like it's going to be forced up shots. Like he shouldn't be getting loads of attempts, really.
Yeah, but listen. The year before he shot 58% from the field. Like it's hyper efficient.
It's a type of shot. No, I like John Collins, but it's a type of shots he gets off. Is why he can only get paid a certain amount.
Right. Okay. Right. Because his post-up game is still.
He plays like a third option player.
Yeah. Right. That is true. Right. He's not going to create very well. I mean, he's got a little bit of a mid-range game that he can shoot, and he certainly can shoot threes. His post-up game is definitely also really lacking, and hopefully he worked on it this summer. And if he did, then look out. Then he's really going to be a handful. But I don't know. When you have guys that can spread the floor like that, is an athlete like that, and there is a high value. He's not like Capella, right? To me, the Capella guys you can find guys who can have energy, can set some screens, can roll, and you can throw it up there and they can dunk. That you can find a lot of, I think.
Capella's just the best version of that, I'd say. Like he's just
right. Right, but there's a definitely clear number that you paid Capella.
The rim protecting big who can't score in the post and rebound, and he can rebound.
Like Capella should never. How much? He's probably being overpaid right now. Let's see what is his salary. Who knows? Anyone know? Let's see. He made
Capella?
16. Yeah, he made 16 last year. Like that is the absolute most he should ever make, and his contract is going to get up to 22. So it'll be an overpay the last few years of his contract, in my opinion, because here's the point. You'll be able to find someone who can give you 85% of that production for half the cost.
Yeah, he just got an extension too.
Right.
For 2 seasons. Yeah. He's one of those guys. He can't hang on the perimeter like a Jared Allen can, because that's the guy I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Jared Allen is probably the best center that can defend another guard on the perimeter. And do a good job defensively guarding the rim.
Yeah.
Jared Allen has a few years. He's a few years younger than Capella. But Capella is stronger than him, so he can hold his own in the post a little better than Jared Allen could. So I think it's a give and take. John Collins, if anything, you want to challenge John Collins to be a lot better on the defensive end.
Yeah.
Because I know that's where he got a lot of flack.
Yeah, and I thought he rose to the challenge. I thought what we saw in the playoffs was someone where he was able to make plays and be a presence there and help. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of that, throughout the thing. Now they let him guard Ben Simmons, and when Ben Simmons just goes to that left block and stands there, it lets John Collins be a lot better of a defender, right? Like that's the other big issue is how much Simmons' positioning would just allow the defense to be much better on defense and help off on guys like on Embiid. Now, the funny thing was, you'll see in the video is, I'm like, this can't possibly be an offense that a coach would design where you'd have him, make a pass or screen and then go hang down by the left block. Well, in crunch time, when they had to yank him, I don't know if you remember in Game 7, there was like a few-minute stretch in the fourth quarter where they had to take Ben Simmons out because it was 3-on-5. And Tobias Harris does the same exact thing, and his man gets in the way, and it ends up being a costly miss because now I can't remember which one it was, but it was like his man contests the shot, and I know. It ends up being a turnover when Embiid loses the ball on a spin move because Collins is standing right there ready for him. Is this the one that the play? I think that's the play. Because Tobias Harris does the same thing that Ben Simmons does all the time. It was almost the point where like maybe that is the offense. And then I'm like, why would that be the offense? It doesn't make sense in the modern NBA why you go stand there. So I'm confused and upset. I'm upset for the Sixers.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I think you were kind of talking about it before. I didn't really interrupt, but it's about off-ball movements. And now some players like James Harden and LeBron, they just don't really do it that much. In the game today in NBA where coaching is so important, why can't the coach easily coach that? Like, why can Norman Powell run off the ball, but James Harden can't? Like, that's one of the simplest things in the game. To screen and roll. That's the easiest part. That's the reason why all the role players can do it. But, like, somehow James Harden can't do that. I don't know.
He was a little better off the ball in Brooklyn.
I mean, slightly. Like, he like, kind of.
He would...
better than before, but, I mean, it's not very hard.
It's hard for a coach to force a superstar to do that more than, like, a role player.
Right.
But, I mean, it's not that's about culture, isn't that? When you're afraid of asking your player to just...
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you know, you have to picture the film session, right? Here's our offense. You're supposed to, you know, pass here and then cut to the weak side corner. And instead, he just takes a couple steps backwards and holds his hand up and wait and claps for the ball, right? Like, that's what he does. Because, again, when you see James Harden do that, or Kyrie, or, you know, fill in the blank, LeBron, all those guys that do that, as far as I'm concerned, there is no offense ever designed on a clipboard by a coach that would say, yes, pass the ball there and you stand there, or you take a couple steps back and then you wait for the ball to come right back to you, right? Like, you know, so we're already, we can establish that, right? Like, when you see that happen, it is not any kind of offense that anyone's ever designed. So now you got to figure out, okay, am I going to go in a film session in front of the whole team and, like, point that out and risk, you know, whatever that might be? Or do I go one-on-one in the film session and say, hey, can we got to stop doing this or not? Like, I suppose that's the conundrum that the coaches have. Because, again, they're not the ones, as far as I'm concerned, that would design the offense to function that way.
I think that habit came from, like, high school because, like, they're the main star of the team. And so they, through college and into the NBA, they've, like, had that luxury of the ball.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, in my mind, college and the coaches there still have a lot of control. So I don't know if I see a lot of that as much. It seems to me mostly the college things that I see are, like, you know, a lot of movement and all that stuff. So, you know, some of that could be really
Harden
could be
wasn't
learned.
always terrible off the ball. He was decent.
That's what makes it so mad to me, because, like, Luka Doncic used to run off.
Well, it's because of D'Antoni.
But it's not just him, though. Like Luka Doncic used to be running off the ball like a perimeter. He used to be catching and shooting. Now he literally, the idea of him not having the ball makes him go crazy.
Right. And here's the thing. You know, Steph has proven that you're a much more dangerous player when you're willing to vary your attack, and you're attacking from different spots on the floor in different manner, off the ball, off the pin downs, and off ball movement. And yet, you're right. Like, but it's tiring, right? It's a tiring thing to do that can wear you out. And then you also then have to rely on your teammates. So there's probably the theory would go, like, when James Harden became James Harden, it was because they wanted to distill the offense down to its absolute, you know, most streamlined, efficient method of generating the best shot possible. And they realized at that point that it has to go through James Harden, right? He has to dominate the ball, control the ball, and basically be the guy who passes for every different shot. I think we've learned that it didn't work, right? Ultimately, it doesn't work. It wears you out for the playoffs. And without the variation, you're too easy to guard when you get against the top defenses. So hopefully that'll change. Maybe this last, you know, this generation goes away and we have a new generation of guys. But the new generation, like you said, is like Luka Doncic, and he's taking the reins and going with it, just like we saw. So Trae Young is doing the Steph Curry thing, which is nice, and he will get off ball too. So I think we're at a crossroads. I think we're gonna be at a real big struggle here to figure out what is going to end up dominating. In my mind, we would probably get the ratings back up if you got more guys playing like Steph than if you did like LeBron.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what made I think in particular the 15, 16, and 16-17 Warriors a little bit better than the 17-18 and especially the 18-19 Warriors. It's because they were all active off the ball. Whereas 17-18, it got pretty Kevin Durant isolation heavy, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was still motion around him, though.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, right. So at least we had that. But
it wasn't like the motion in 15, 16, and 16, 17.
Facts.
His first year there.
Was out, and listen, we had them. We had them come out in I did a video on this because rarely do you ever have a player who says, well, our offense worked better when I did the ISOs. And then the coach, Steve Kerr, weighed in too. So when I did a video of that, and it did cause a little consternation amongst the Warriors, some of the players, but that's a story for another day. But nonetheless, you were absolutely right. We had some of the best beautiful basketball with that first year that Kevin Durant got there. And so at least we had that, and then the next year we had that a little bit too. So if that doesn't make enough of an impact on people, and then starting with the 2014 Spurs, then I don't know what we're going to do here. And then I worry that the ratings will continue to go down because it's going to turn into this heliocentric form of basketball where one guy controls. The offshoot of that, by the way, is when that guy goes to the bench, the team falls apart because they don't necessarily have anything else. They haven't been working on anything else to go through.
Why the problem with LeBron-led teams have been so bad when he goes to the bench, because he's been so ball dominant for his whole career.
Yeah.
And he controls everything at that. He's running every pick and roll. He's never screwed. His best years, that's why I think his best years were in Miami, because he would sometimes they would post up Chris Bosh. Wasn't very often, but they would let Wade run the show. They would he would do stuff off the ball.
Maybe go back and watch those Heat teams. You're not going to see a lot of post-ups at all for Bosh.
For Chris Bosh, no.
And when you remember how good he was on that right block in Toronto, it was just criminal that LeBron or whoever it was, and I always thought it was LeBron. Somebody decided, no, you're going to go park your butt out at the 18-foot mark, and we're just going to kick it out to you. And he was great at that too. But the idea that they wouldn't throw him a bone, and by the way, for as hard as Chris Bosh played on defense, and he was amazing on defense on those teams, he deserved 7 post-ups a game. Just throw it, let him have it. Just let him throw it down. Raise your fist, whatever that play call is. Get his butt down there and let him eat a little bit. They wouldn't do that, and even more credit to Chris Bosh, Hall of Famer now, that he was so willing to sublimate himself. He didn't have to. It didn't have to be that way. That's the whole thing. Is they win a title no matter what. They win all those games no matter what, and they can reward the guy. That's what's so frustrating as a coach and as a point guard and as a team member when you need to know how to balance these things better for harmony. Maybe they don't lose that first time against the Mavericks because they would have had that too. Instead of getting stymied by the defense they played with. Oh my God, who was the French guy that was playing LeBron? No, that was against the Spurs. Who? First of all, they had a little guy from Puerto Rico. No, Puerto Rico from what's his name?
JJ Barea.
JJ Barea, yeah, guarding LeBron a little bit, right, and sagging off of him because of that. And it's fine, go down the Chris Bosh down low in the post and get the buckets that way. So anyway, that's my TED talk on that. And it was frustrating to watch, even though they won. You can't expect more. They got 2 titles, but I would have liked to have seen more.
Oscar Robertson said it best. The hardest thing in basketball is knowing when to shoot and when to pass. And I agree with that statement. Yeah.
I suppose, yes, it's the hardest thing from a team playing in a game standpoint. Yeah, I guess there's step back threes in Game 7 to win. The title are harder, but shot decision making is the hardest thing. Absolutely, it's in real time. It's fast. You got these crazy players who are long and fast. So and by the way, not only do you have to make the right decision, but it has to be weighed in the context of the team. Right, and how's that going to affect this guy and this guy? And by the way, that also goes to the passing, where if there are players in the league, kind of still, I can think of guys from the past. If you threw it to them, you knew they were going to shoot it, so you need to be careful about passing it to them, right? Because it's going to go up, and there are ways you can kind of chisel away at whether you can help them be better decision makers on that. And that's another part of it. It adds a whole other whole bunch of computations you got to make in real time. It's not an easy game.
Coach, if I can go back to your video that you're doing about the 76ers.
Sure.
Do you think the team would be better built with Embiid being the main option at least, let's say, every 8 out of 10, every 4 out of 5 times, or should they bring in a guard who could probably look to get the other pieces involved a bit more easier? Because I know one thing I remember you saying is it's easier for a shooter to shoot the ball if he's getting it from the inside rather than it being a skip pass, somewhere along the perimeter. Where he's catching it on the side.
Right. No, that's right. Well, here's the question. Can the Sixers win a title? And obviously they want to win a title, right? They're not happy being like the Jazz, who are, upper tier in the Western Conference, are tough out I think the Jazz are happy, to be relevant. I think. I don't know. Maybe they want to win a title too, but they're also, happy. The Sixers, in my mind, they brought in Doc. They want to win a title. Can you do that if you have Embiid as the main attraction, and you replace Simmons with like a more complementary player who can shoot the heck out of the ball, right? Let's just say you did that versus someone who's going to create out the dribble and be another son in that universe. Can you win a title doing that with a guy as good as Embiid?
So kind of like what the Magic did with Dwight Howard.
Yeah, okay. We can probably do something. Yeah, look a bit. Yeah, okay. Well,
a little different. Different. Dwight Howard was a pick and roll guy. Embiid's a post up guy.
Yeah, a post up guy who can shoot threes a little bit. Yeah. A little bit. So, gosh, I don't know. I don't know. I've been so focused on the fact that they would need another guy that it's a threat from the outside who can handle off the dribble too and create. Just because everyone has that. Like that just seems like everyone has that. Who doesn't? I can't picture anybody who doesn't really have that player. So I would think that you need it, right? Because there's going to be times when Embiid's going to need some help, and especially if he goes out, or he gets hurt, whatever. But if he goes out, you need somebody who can do that. And if you don't have that, then you're really in trouble. Then you're going to get outscored by so much when he goes out in the playoffs. Then they can't win those games. Does that make sense?
They got Joe Nobi.
Who?
No.
Oh, okay. So that's the issue. They don't necessarily need, if they have a Chris Middleton kind of guy who can do it, that might be enough. You don't necessarily need a Harden guy, but you need. I think you need somebody who's going to be able to create and take some pressure off of Embiid.
The best year they had was the year with Jimmy Butler, where he was that perimeter player who could create.
Right, that was the four bounce Kawhi shot, right? That's
Kawhi,
right.
Eastern Conference semifinal.
So that's the big argument people have. Is like when I keep saying, and I say this before that season, that the Embiid-Simmons pairing would never work, but you can argue that it did. Like if Kawhi doesn't hit that shot, then the Sixers go to the conference finals. They probably could have beaten
Milwaukee.
The Raptors. No, they probably could have beaten Milwaukee.
It depends on if Brett Brown is smart enough to build the wall.
Right. I would hope that they could have figured that part out, but maybe you're right. That's an interesting question. And then who knows? Do they get to the finals? And they
would have had a lot of good Giannis defenders.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and then they would have beaten. They could have beaten the Warriors if the Warriors had those injuries. But at the very least, they could have gotten to the NBA Finals, and that's the bar, right? It's like, okay, whether you win the finals or not is a whole other question, but getting to the finals is obviously the bar in my mind. That's why, the Brad Stevens teams, they needed to get to the finals, for him to have earned such a exalted, spot of the coaching tree. It just felt like that needed to be the validation for him, and they couldn't do it. Same here with the Sixers. So, so you could have argued that, they did have it, but then again, they had it because they had Jimmy Butler, and that's that player they needed. And
the rest of that team was a mess.
Keep going. What was it?
Bench,
their starting five
even their starting lineup didn't fit very well.
It didn't fit, but it had
and they still almost beat scores.
Let's go to that team. Let's see here. Phil.
Yeah, JJ had 18. Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris.
Right. What year is that? Are we talking about We're talking about 18-19, right? All right, 18-19. Yeah. All right. So here are the people who played them. Oh, here are the most starters. So Simmons, Embiid, Redick, Butler, and Wilson Chandler started the fifth most games that year. And then Tobias Harris had 20.
No.
Yeah, the trade.
Harris comes in midseason, right?
He got traded.
Yeah, from the
Clippers. So he started the last 27 games for them in the regular season and then in the playoffs. So that's actually, so it was, let me go to the playoffs here. The playoffs had it Harris, Butler, Simmons, Redick, and Embiid. Tobias Harris and Jimmy Butler and Simmons and Embiid, that's a good four. That's a good four-man lineup and with Redick. You're right. What happened? I guess Butler hightailed it out of there, huh?
Yeah, he hated Ben Simmons. I think he strongly dislike Ben.
Well, I know he hated the situation, but are we able to say? I know he was on some podcast and talking. I can't remember. Are we able to say the target was Ben Simmons specifically?
I think it was Ben Simmons.
It was Brett Brown too. He was on JJ Redick's podcast, and they were talking about the whole situation.
Yeah,
it was a lot Brett Brown too.
Brett Brown, right. Now, because the thing is with Jimmy, if you're not a certain kind of coach, he's really going to have a hard time dealing with you. Like Hoiberg, the same thing, where Hoiberg didn't coach like a Tom Izzo.
He was the Bulls coach, right?
Yeah. So when he was at the Bulls, he called out Hoiberg, publicly, which is just, it was the end of Hoiberg's coaching tenure right there. The problem is you don't need to be like Izzo to be successful, and I think the Butler thinks that needed to be that way. Although it's interesting, I wonder. In my mind, Spoelstra. I'm gonna have to talk to some Spoelstra people. I don't think he's like Izzo. I don't think he's a yeller, screamer in your face like that. There were expectations that Miami has that they do put in strong language and really make sure people buy into that whole thing with Pat Riley at the top. So that helps. Like for instance, what would Brett Brown have done that like Spoelstra or what does Brett Brown not do that Spoelstra does, right? That like satisfies Butler as a coach. Anybody have any insights into that?
I don't know. I think if I had to guess, I think a big problem was also Ben Simmons. It seems like he's kind of cut from the same cloth as Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins, who Jimmy Butler had problems with. He's like, doesn't seem like he hasn't improved his game at all since.
Okay, well that's a fact. But the Simmons thing is interesting because I don't know if anyone would say he doesn't play hard, right? Although there does seem to be a little bit of a disconnect on the playing hard thing sometimes. Where like even in the game 7, I caught him.
There seems to be a little bit of a too cool for school attitude for Ben Simmons.
Right.
Sometimes.
Well, but here's the
really, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but here's the problem. We don't want to judge a guy just because of the way his face looks, right? And I could see his face, there's not a lot of emotion. He doesn't sort of express himself. So we have to be careful that that's not confused by too cool for school. However, you're right. There are moments like I caught him guarding Trae Young in the fourth quarter on a pick and roll. They screened with Curry's man. Curry hedges, which is the reason why I hate hedging is because on his way out of there to get out of the hedge, he ends up screening Simmons for a step. But Simmons does not show any urgency to get over to guard Young, who nails a 3 in his eye that puts him up by, I think it was 6, and that pretty much was the nail in the coffin. And so, by the way, Hayden, if you're moving from your house, feel free to mute or whatever that was, or pouring a tall one.
Could you say that? Could you say that last part one more time?
Yes. So Curry hedges because his man screens on Simmons. It gets in the way of Simmons trying to get around to stay with Trae Young, but then doesn't really get back attached to Trae Young after a couple more dribbles, and Young just nails a 3 in his eye to put him up by, I want to say it was 6 with like 2 minutes to go, whatever it was, and that was the game. Now, the next time down, Simmons knocks the ball away from Trae Young on a reach around, and they get a crucial steal. So, like, there's an example of him, giving out and really trying with his energy. Obviously, the problem then do you remember what happened after they got that steal in the open court and they were going to attack? They just foul Simmons, and Simmons only makes 1 of 2. And when you're down by 2, or I think it was down by 2 at that point, deep in the fourth quarter, this 1 point per possession thing, which is, that's really good. That would be a good offense. It is not really good when you're down by 2 and with very few possessions left. You need to hit those. That's why when Thibault gets fouled after Simmons gives the ball up on that spin move and he should have shot it, Thibault only makes 1 of 2, and they were down 2 at that point, I think. It's still not good enough. You need to be able to have a guy that can knock down both of those free throws in that situation, and it just kills you. It kills you when you're trying to win a crucial playoff game.
Coach, after watching your video at Venice Beach, why doesn't Doc Rivers give you a chance to come into practice and work with Ben?
I'm ready. But the problem with that is that there are 10,000 people saying the same thing that I am, and I mean saying that they can do that, right? And it's like, how do you get to there? That is so complicated because they all have their own coaches too, right? And so they're all working with those guys, and the teams have to figure out how they're going to approach this. I mean, listen, teams have employed shooting coaches that have been so suboptimal in the recent past that I can't understand how they who convinced them that was the guy to hire. But you'll see. You never know. Crazier things have happened. Crazier things than a guy who's coaching essentially on YouTube gets hired by an NBA team. So you never know if that might happen or not, and whether or not I want to do that or not. But certainly, just parenthetically, I do help a couple guys, with their shooting. And do some crazy analytics with it to help them shoot better. So, I'm kind of like satellite around the around.
Know a lot about video.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's not even knowing it; it's also how to communicate it. And like I say in that video, if you try and approach the wrong way, then you're basically telling the guy his girlfriend's ugly. And it's not easy. But the funny thing is the more I learn about shooting and how to help. And by the way, if you want me to help your jump shot, then download the Expert X. Check out Expert X, which is in that video, and I can do a one-on-one with you when you send me your film. But the more I learn about shooting, it's like the less I actually do. Right? Like I've realized now how important each individual person is with their own body language and their own biomechanics. That we're not going to be here to train someone to shoot like Klay Thompson because they probably can't do that physically. So we need to unlock the most optimal version of what you can do. And so that's what I've developed, some very clear-cut ways. But that's not even just the what has to happen in your jump shot to make you better is one thing, but then to help you understand how to get there is really the most important thing. And that's what requires a very soft touch. Like I play tennis, and I used to be really good. Like I was like a 3-5 player or whatever, and I took a lot of time off, and I'm just now in the last 4 months playing once or twice a week. And it's so hard, and I'm losing my mind out there. So I spent all this time helping players on the basketball court how to stay focused, how to perform under pressure. And I am the guy who's throwing his racket, yelling and screaming. I'm like, you would not want to be next to me on the court. And it's given me a whole new outlook and lease on how the best way is to approach these things, because I'm working with guys who are telling me certain things, and it's probably not the best way to do it, and it's too much of an internal focus versus external. So I'm going through all this whole in turmoil right now, and it's given me a whole new outlook now on how to approach this, especially when you're talking about NBA players who absolutely positively cannot afford to get into any kind of headspace of doubt. Right? Like you can imagine, I'm playing tennis right now, and I was in a drill that I had never done before with a group of guys last Thursday. And I missed the first one and got so down that I could not even hit the ball. I hit the ball with my racket, and it would almost go straight down. It was impossible to do, and I was doing it. You can imagine how that kind of mindset, if it takes hold on an NBA player, you could destroy your career, right? Like they can't afford to do that. The Markelle Fultz thing, even though it was probably an injury too, just about derailed his career. So it's really hard to do it.
Example of that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Antoine Walker in the 2000s. I think he really messed up his headspace. He became a really bad free throw shooter, I think.
Oh, I don't remember that. But is that what happened?
Yeah, I think he just really got into his head.
All right, I'm going to check it right now. We're talking, but the real guy who that happened to is Nick Anderson, who played for the Magic, back in the day, and they had a chance to beat the Bulls. And Nick missed a really cool key free throw in the year that when Michael had come back, whatever it was, he missed a key free throw and never was the same. And the doubt crept in. It's a really extreme example, but that is why sometimes they might seem like a-holes, but in reality, part of it is to protect that psyche from ever getting anywhere near the notion of I can't do this or I don't feel good about it. And we know this because we've seen guys like even Dwight Howard, for instance, who can nail 80% of his free throws in practice and then goes into the games and can't hit half of them. It's clearly mental, right? It's not the physical part because his body knows how to do that motion. But it really, when your mental gets involved in that, and I'm now living proof on the tennis court, muscle slack takes over. You know what muscle slack is? It's when your muscles are not tense in the right spots at the right time, and muscle slack can let all your mechanics just fall apart in the middle of a shot, and that's what the mental side can do to you. And if it gets a hold, it's hard to shake that, and that's when you'll see them go to psychologists to help them overcome that. You never want to get to that point, and that's why those players guard that psyche so vociferously. And again, when you're talking about trying to help them with their jump shot, and that's why NBA trainers too, it's like they're in a situation where they obviously they don't want to lose their client. So you don't want to get into a situation where you're in a a confrontational thing, and that's why the new version of coaching I'm trying to help other coaches understand is that like you need to have a goal with what you do on the court when you interact with your players. So it's like, okay, here's a player who made a mistake, and you don't want him to make that mistake again. Okay, well, if that's the goal in your mind, is the best way to ensure that happening to just go crazy and insane and grab him by the collar and scream nose to nose and push him and all this stuff and stuff? Is that the best way to try and ensure he won't make that mistake again? Like, I don't know if anybody can answer that yes. I would hope not, because when you realize that that's the goal, then let's figure out a better way to help this player overcome that, whatever he did to make that mistake. Does that all make sense?
It does. I think if we're going back to the 76ers issue, then the problem was, look at the culture of the Heat, quote unquote, the culture of the Heat, versus what the culture was with Brett Brown there. Jimmy Butler could bank on the fact that most of his teammates, if not all of them, would put in the hard work on their craft, etc., even though they're down there in South Beach, which we all know is a big distraction.
Right.
Versus being with the 76ers, who you already gave Ben Simmons a max contract to, and he hasn't improved his game that much since he got into the league, and the fact that Jimmy Butler was looking for his money. But, that was the thing. Remember they bought that, giving him a 4-year deal? And it was like, we'll probably give you
$3. They paid Tobias instead.
They gave it to Tobias, so Jimmy Butler wasn't getting his money from them.
Oh, I remember now.
They prioritized the wrong player. If anything, they should have traded Ben Simmons or let him go to Miami and kept Jimmy Butler. Maybe they would have been in a better position today.
Now it's all coming back to me, and you're absolutely right. That was the right deal, and that's probably when I first started saying, this Ben Simmons Embiid pairing isn't going to work, because I think I had seen enough from like with Butler there that's what they needed more of, and not the other way around. You know what the irony is? The irony is, I bet you Butler gets to Miami and they're running sprints, they're running suicides. And he's like, yeah, that's what we need. I don't know if you ever hear me rail about that, but like, there's nothing about running in a straight line at a predetermined distance at a predetermined time that has anything to do with basketball. And if you want to improve your cardio, then there's like 100,000 different drills you can do.
Way more efficient.
Yeah, that are that deal with skill building. And but certain players have been trained to think that that's what they need to play as well as they can, and that's so disheartening for me, because that just means to me that they've never had a coach that practiced emotional intelligence. And of course, some of the Izzo fans, because I think it's well documented at this point that like I completely disagree with how Izzo coaches. When he detonates on his players. And then they sent to me some video of him this past weekend with his old guys coming back. All the NBA guys were back, hugging him and happy to see him, and he's happy to see them and all this kind of stuff. Everything is great and nice, as if that excuses his behavior, I suppose, is why they're sending it to me. To me, it's like, hey, I love seeing coaches, see their old players and hug it out. That's great. Doesn't change the fact at all that he is a detriment to his team a lot of the time. And I wonder exactly what that's what I was talking about, the difference between like Brett Brown and Eric Spoelstra, and what that was that would cause Jimmy to not only not call out a coach publicly like he was doing for his other coaches, but then praise the Miami Heat and say that this culture is so much better. I really wonder if all it was he got there and he saw guys like this running suicides or something like that. You know what I mean?
I mean, Eric Spoelstra, he's also won championships too, so.
That helps. That definitely helps.
He also had LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh.
Yeah, but he got back to the finals in the bubble at least, so that was good.
He's
a
great coach. I'm not taking away.
And I love the way they were playing in that finals year, and like the offensively, and how the thing that's weird for me is like as a triangle offense coach, I wouldn't reinvent the offense every year. But like most coaches seem to do that to some degree. They don't really have a system as much as like sort of plays or whatever. Even though we're moving into an era where pistol action's so prevalent that it's basically like a system with progressions anyway. But that is flexible enough. Ironically, the pistol is right out of the triangle offense. By the way, in case you didn't know that, the secondary option of the pinch post action is pistol, which mostly what you see now. And then the worst part about it is that the pinch post action, which is the primary part before you get in the pistol in the triangle, nobody really runs it as much anymore, and that really kills me because that is one of the most devastating offensive actions ever invented, even now. And if you don't know what pistol is, you can imagine a guy catching the ball at the elbow with his back to the basket, and you pass it to him from the top, and then you follow that pass to the outside looking for the handoff back. That two-man game. Picture any of these tops. Picture even Russ and LeBron running that would just be devastating.
Yeah,
the defense
LeBron
wouldn't be
as
able.
the screener or Russ as the screener doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's hard to picture Russ catching the ball with his back to the basket at the elbow. But yeah, I love when you mix and match, players in different roles. But because by the way, you can extend that now to the 3-point line and run that same action, which we do see because people following their pass, getting the handoff back, if the guy gets stuck underneath that screen. Under the handoff, that's a shot, right? Where back in 2000, nobody would have shot a running, catching, 3-pointer like that. But we know now how to make those. So, but even still, catch it, shot fake. You're going downhill. The guy's rolling with you. The other three guys are moving on the weak side to occupy the defense. It's devastating. It's built into the triangle, but unfortunately,
Spain pick and roll is the most devastating play. Like the Suns, I'd be interested to see how many points per possession they were scoring.
Yeah.
It seems like they got a good shot every single time they ran it.
Absolutely, and I certainly pointed that out a lot in those videos. Yes, Spain is great when you're talking about pick and roll overall. Then the question is why don't they run it all the time?
If I had to guess, it's tricky to get it right, like back screening.
Yeah,
the screener's man at the right time.
Well, yeah, and Chris Paul didn't seem to like to run it that much. They ran it a lot more campaign.
Yeah, his favorite play is just a simple high ball screen, snake to the right elbow and fade away.
Yeah, and force a switch and then just shoot right over and shoot over the big who is contesting within an inch of his life, like just about blocking that shot, and he still hits it. I don't know how he does that. Those are tough shots. But by the way, that's the other thing about Simmons is that a lot of the times when he doesn't move or his man is sagging, they score. They hit shots in that way, and you can say, "Oh, look at that, they're doing okay." But it's like they're so hard. Those shots are so hard. Floating over a contest and from 14 feet out, and I don't know. To me, so you want easier shots, right? You want shots where the defense is more compromised more often. Not all the time because that's not going to happen, but you need them more often. And I just feel like that where we're at now to put this full circle. Is that the Simmons makes it too hard on them in that kind of samples that setting. That said, there are only a few teams that have these dominant post-up players who are going to play that position that Ben Simmons needs to play. So there are 24 teams in the league that he could go to and, in theory, be his best self, which is playing with 4 shooters around him and him being like the traditional center. Doesn't mean he has to play that way. They had Mike Scott guarding Rudy Gobert for a lot of that game against Utah. Although he did guard Rudy a few times. And again, there are very few players who are going to back him down. He is way too strong. I'm not even sure Embiid could back him down. Do we think that? What do you think?
Well, his center of gravity is lower than Embiid.
Okay. So that would be, he won't, right? Right? He could hold them off. Yeah. I would think that would be pretty close to a fair fight. And then Jokic, too. I bet you Simmons could hold his ground, and Jokic would not be able to back him down very easily.
Yeah, I don't think many players could back down Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
I think Embiid could because I think when Embiid wants to, I don't think anyone can stop him because he's 7'1", 300 pounds.
Is he that heavy? All right, but whatever he is,
he's not listed at that, but
okay,
he's not he's more than 280.
Wow. All right. Either way, even if he is 280, that's still a handful. Yeah. And then once you get beyond those two, Enes Kanter, there's Nurkic, there's not a lot of other guys that are going to do that and lower their shoulder and try and back you down, and that's probably fine. So so that's why I'm thinking, that's why they could afford to play him there.
To play center.
Yeah. I mean, Giannis is a center. Well, I guess they play Lopez with him too. Yeah. It's interesting, but listen, it's time to get back to our lives. I think. Who here is going to watch this game? Watch this video tomorrow on Ben Simmons. I hope a lot of you guys are.
I will.
I mean, I'm sensing there's a huge. Even though the storyline was from 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Depends on the thumbnail.
Oh, well, the thumbnail's already out. I already have it designed. It's Ben Simmons staring at you. I got the clutch points, guys. He's staring very forlornly in the middle of the frame. And by the way, the title of the video is The Ben Simmons Problem. So I think it's a pretty good title.
That's a good title.
Pretty good thumb.
You got Monday Night Football coming up tomorrow, too. You sure you want to drop it tomorrow? Or not?
Yeah, well, but if I drop it early in the morning and Monday Night Football is not till night, I think I'm okay. Right?
Okay.
I thought about it for a second, and I feel like, you know, and I got to get it out. I have to get more videos out. I got to get it out. So, but I'm glad I didn't do it. I was like racing to get it done this morning, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, yeah, everyone's been watching football. So, I'm going to get it out tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. And thank you guys all for being in the show. I really appreciate it. Great stuff. We'll be doing some more of these coming up, and I'll certainly be doing more live shows on YouTube too. So keep your eyes open for all that stuff. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. All right. For some reason, people are not subscribing all of a sudden. I don't know why. So subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. And thank you guys for being on the show, and thank you for being on the YouTube side. And don't forget, sports fans at B-Ball Breakdown. We're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.